Last month was all about getting lost in translation. There's what you said, there's what they heard, and there's the gap between the two. But now I want to shift a little bit and I want to focus on signals. I'm talking about the signals that get us lost in communication, the notes that we're misreading, the things that we're not picking up on, the signals that might transform our dialogue and our interactions with one another.
Tell me more.
Missing the signals can often be the thing that proves disastrous for intergenerational teams. Because when a boomer goes quiet versus when a Gen Zer goes quiet, it's two different things that are communicating something different. And that's the problem. We perceive different as bad. Not different as just different, but different is bad because my way is the way. And if you're not doing it my way, then you are doing it wrong. And it is that, it's missing that brings the effects that we don't want to see. Every generation developed their communication style within a very particular context. It's the time, the place, the communication techniques, all of those things that they grew up in. It's not good, it's not bad, it's not right, it's not wrong, really, it's neutral. If anything, it's adaptive. We are all products of very specific times and very specific places. But how we learn to communicate becomes the default lens through which we view the world. And so when we see someone else's boundaries, or we see their skepticism, or we see their silence, we're not wrong about what we're observing. Those things are actually happening. Where we show up wrong is in what they mean. We take their actions and their feelings and how they show up, and we interpret it through our lens, and the inability to distinguish between the two is how information gets lost. It's how relationships break down. It is how communication falls apart, and we find ourselves all of a sudden in situations that we never expected ourselves to be in. I'm always saying to us that we need to replace judgment with curiosity. So what I'm going to give you a bit of framing around each generation is not for you to judge them, it's for you to be curious about them. Who are these people? How did they come to be this way? So when a boomer goes silent, it often means they're processing or deferring to hierarchy. It's not passivity, and it's not being checked out. Boomers see directness as a form of respect. Showing up physically and consistently means commitment. If you read a boomer's present-based work ethic as performative, you're looking through the wrong lens. For Gen X, skepticism is not cynicism. It's a survival instinct from a generation raised alongside institutional distrust. They watch the institutions their parents believed in wobble. Independence is not disengagement. It's how they were taught to stay standing. When a Gen Xer says, just tell me what you need and let me do it, that's not them building a wall. That's trust in their dialect. You trust me to be the person that I'm supposed to be. I think it's a generation of latchkey kids. That's what it is. Just get out the way and let them work. For millennials, enthusiasm is not naivete. Questioning the process is not insubordination. It's a request for meaning. Millennials generally need to know the why before they can fully give you the what. If you withhold the why on principle, you're not testing their commitment, you're starving their engagement. Gen Z. When they go quiet, it's often them feeling overwhelmed or distrustful. It's not laziness. Direct digital communication for them is not rudeness. It's efficiency in their native medium. This is what they were born into. Boundaries are not fragility. They're a learned response to the burnout they watch consume the generation right in front of them and their parents. Gen Z didn't invent the boundary. They just stopped apologizing for it. So why do we keep misreading each other? Now, what might surprise you is the data says there's not actually much difference between the generations. I would argue supremely against that. But the academic literature is the academic literature. A meta-analysis of generational differences in work consistently finds that the real gaps are small. So the generational skeptics are right, Not exactly, because a study by Scott Lester and his colleagues asked workers both what they valued and what they believed other generations valued. And this is where it gets interesting. It's the perceived differences swamp the real ones. Out of 45 perceived differences, 27 were statistically significant, and the actual differences, there were 8 of them. Again, I might argue against this a little bit because there's a gap between the academic literature and the practitioner literature, but I'm trying to stick to the academic literature here. The generational divide is not really in our values. The generational divide is in our reading of each other. So we're going to assume the academic literature is correct here. And we're going to say that there aren't many generational differences, but the true differences lie in our perceptions of each other. And I think that's something we can all get behind, because at the end of the day, we all want the same things, right? We want to do good work. We want to be able to pay our bills, support our families, have our hobbies, do whatever it is that we want to do. But there are a lot of things that get in the way of that, namely ourselves, and how we view each other, and how we talk to each other, and how we perceive each other. All those old boomers, they're all the same. Oh, those Gen Zers, those kids. I'm not seeing a person in front of me, am I? I'm seeing a caricature. I'm seeing an idea that I've built in my head of who these people are and what they believe and how they behave. And that is who I'm speaking to, not the person in front of me. If you go further down the research hole, the research consistently finds that people expect people of different age groups to view them negatively. As a millennial, I can tell you, I walk into the room and I'm expecting the boomers to view me a certain way, to speak about me a certain way. I mean, I am the generation that couldn't buy a home because I loved avocado toast too much. I didn't write that about me. They wrote that about me. And so when we walk in with this expectation of negativity, when we walk in with this expectation that you are not going to view me correctly, what do? We get into defense mode. We brace ourselves ahead of time for what we expect to come. And why are we like this? Because we assume that our signal is the universal one. We assume that the way we communicate messages and the way that we tell people about the world, that way is the right way. Everyone means what we mean when we say that thing. We want and we expect others to be like us. And here's the difficult truth underneath that. The workplace has historically rewarded certain generational styles. Typically, because let's be real, white collar jobs as we know them are a very new thing. So boomer and Gen X norms have been set as the standard, and they've pathologized the rest. So when a millennial or a Gen Zer comes in talking about mental health or talking about boundaries, because that was not the way that boomers and Gen Xers came up in the workplace, they view that and they're like, what are you talking about? That's foolish. All those kids. When someone else's signal, when our generational signals don't match the dominant norms, we don't get a translation gap. What we do is we call them the problem. This is a frustration of mine, where I walk into places and we'll have a question about what is maturity. Well, who defines maturity? We're all walking through this life through the lens of our different cultural signals. I'm a very specific vintage, okay? 1987, Brooklyn, child of hip hop, raised on Jordans, like a different breed from a lot of my suburban, we'll just call them suburban coworkers, people raised in certain places. And there are certain, here, right? Where I'm from, it is nothing to see a 40-year-old man wearing a pair of Jordans, because that's what we wear. But where I live and I work and I occupy spaces, to be a 40-year-old man who walks around in Jordans, that's viewed as somehow a bad thing. But if I were to show up where I'm from in a pair of Hokas or the Nike dad shoe, you know what I'm talking about, be insane. So why is it that one person gets to define what is good, right, and true? One group gets to say that this should be the norm for everyone else. And then what we do is we look down on everyone who is not like us. We say that they must be wrong. Now that's just on a personal level. What does that look like when we show up in the workplace? And boomers and Gen Xers have established the norms, and they say, this is the way you're supposed to work. And so when you get another group of people who come in and they work in a different way, they are not only pathologized, but they're demonized. They are told that your way of being, that on an ontological level, you are wrong. What do you think that does to a person? What do you think it does to their career prospects? You see, what we need to stop pretending is that power dynamics are not a thing. If the people with the power, who hold the leverage, who are not sharing leadership, are the ones who have established the norms, and they're saying that if you don't conform to who I am and the way that I say things need to be, then of course that's going to carry weight. Now, I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing, but if we cannot recognize that there are those who are in power that shape what is normative and acceptable, and that when your normative and acceptable doesn't match their normative and acceptable, they call you a problem. Because their framework doesn't have space for different, and therefore different is bad. If we can't recognize that, if we can't have an honest conversation about that, then we're not going to get anywhere as people, as leaders, as those who are trying to become more generationally fluent. Generational fluency requires curiosity before conclusion. And even before that, it comes with knowing and understanding yourself, knowing and understanding the world that you were shaped in, your defaults, what you think is normal. Knowing the places that when different shows up, it bothers you a bit. It makes you start to question things. It rubs you the wrong way. It frustrates you. Because if you can't do that, then you're not going to be able to talk to someone who's different from you, to work well with them. Generational fluency requires adaptability. It requires the ability to say that my way is not the only way, and I have something to learn from those who are different from me. My fear is a lot of you won't do that work. A lot of you are going to get stuck in this hole where you say, no, my way is the right way, and it's a non-negotiable. I once had a boss say to me, as we were kind of tussling over our conflicting working styles, he said, well, I'm not going to change. You need to change. It's interesting. We're just a few years apart, both highly educated, both worked hard, had long career experiences. So we've kind of established a bit of who we are as people, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's everything wrong with being a person who's a leader and looking at those you're in charge of leading and saying, I'm not going to change a thing about myself. You need to adapt to me. Listen, if that's how you want to live, that's how you want to walk through this world, you go for it. But for those of you who are interested in becoming more generationally fluent, who are interested in just becoming the best version of yourselves, I'm a coach who is here and ready and willing to help, because we need less of that in this world. But what do I know? I'm just some guy from Brooklyn.